Today, inshallah, we're going to continue talking about cybersecurity. Basically, we covered a lot of parts about the impact of data breach and things of that sort. Now we're going to talk about how to protect your computing devices. First of all, you have to have a firewall and keep it on. Basically, firewall is extremely important. Okay, firewall is basically a piece of software or a hardware. Sometimes it's a hardware firewall, that prevents hackers from getting into your systems. So basically, the firewall is like a control device that keeps a check on whatever goes in or out of your systems. Okay, so for example, you have a certain network, you have a number of computing devices, you have a network connecting all of them, and basically the internet is accessed by all of them. Instead of having the whole network accessed by the internet, you have like a firewall device, and basically you access the internet through that firewall. You can basically set the rules for how the firewall should work. And it should be basically, first of all, it should check every, ingoing or outgoing traffic and make sure that whatever goes in or out is according to your rules. Okay. So for example, you can actually, for some companies, they actually set this firewall to prevent people from accessing certain packets or certain kind of streaming sites, for example. Okay. So basically you can set these rules here in that firewall. Okay. So basically you can have a version of it that is just a software, okay, firewall, where basically this is like a computer or the server that you have on your system, or basically the edge point in your network, where actually this edge point is the point of access to the internet, or it can be on the router, like a hardware version of the firewall that is set up on a router, and you can actually program that router to control whatever you want. And basically, you should be sure that this firewall is on and always updated to prevent hackers from accessing your personal or company data. Okay, so the firewall is like the guard, okay, the security guard on your network. Okay, make sure that this security guard is present and is alert, so that you can make sure that whatever you're protecting is basically being protected. So basically, a firewall is a very important device to use to protect your computing devices. You should also always use antivirus or anti-spyware. Okay, sometimes you have actually like an internet security suite where it has both of them together. Okay, so it is designed to scan your computer and basically also scan your incoming email. Sometimes it can actually also basically check on your websites, the websites that you're accessing, to make sure that they are not malicious or things of that sort. So basically it's very important because they can detect, like for example, if you have an incoming email with a malicious attachment, or that email has a certain kind of a phishing message or something like that. It can detect that and basically can alert you to that before you can make the mistake of opening the attachment by mistake. Okay, sometimes you browse through your email and just open whatever attachment that are there without further checking on whether they are legitimate or not. Sometimes you do that and it can be disastrous, basically. If you have an antivirus, it can actually check on these attachments and make sure that if they are malicious, it basically deletes them or prevents access to them. Okay. One of the funny things about the antivirus actually is that some antiviruses, you know, the .mat files, if you have a MATLAB data file, okay, if you save it, it's out like data.mat, okay. If you try to send that by email, it will be blocked, okay, because sometimes one of these, you know, the attachments, some people use these attachments actually to put some malicious content. So basically, if you're trying to send a collaborator of yours or a colleague of yours some data, try to zip them first. Put them into .zip or .rar before you send them. If you send them like this, it will be a problem. Okay, it's not going to be accessible. If you have a proper antivirus, it will not allow you to actually open an attachment that looks like this. Okay. So make sure that basically just know exactly that you have an antivirus, and that antivirus has anti-spyware, and basically this would actually prevent phishing emails or basically problems of accessing malicious websites, or basically whenever you access, even when you access a malicious website, you do not allow this malicious website to download content or execute some programs. It will actually prevent them from doing that. The most important thing is basically to manage your operating system and browser. Your operating system is basically, if somebody has access to your operating system, they can do whatever they want. They can basically install a rootkit, and basically they just, they can do whatever they want. They can open a back door, they can do whatever they want to your computer. So your operating system is the most important piece of software on your system, okay? You have to make sure that it's protected. In order for you to be able to say that it's doing its job and it's protected, you have to make sure that it's updated. Okay, so basically these updates basically try to remove vulnerabilities, because hackers are always trying to take advantage of vulnerabilities in operating systems. And usually people discover vulnerabilities all the time in operating systems. Okay, so basically there is, I told you this before, basically from the time you discover the vulnerability to the time the fix is released, basically there is an opportunity for the hackers to take advantage of all the operating systems or the operating systems versions in the world, basically, before the update is applied. But actually, you have to make sure whenever the update is accessible, you just basically update your operating system right away to prevent the hackers from having more time to attack your system. Okay, so this is extremely important. Also, web browsers are as important, by the way, because some web browsers actually allow, if you have vulnerabilities, they would allow hackers to basically somehow get into your system or access some parts of your system or download some malicious content without your knowledge. So basically, if you do that, basically, if you go to your Chrome, for example, and look at the about, and basically look at check for updates, make sure that your browser is updated, up to date all the time. Try to do that periodically. Don't forget about it. This is very important. Always also set the security settings on your computer.
Can you repeat, please, Doctor, the last point?
For your browser, if you have a Chrome browser, for example, if you access, basically, if you just go to the internet and say that update Chrome, or basically how to update Chrome, it will give you exactly where in the Chrome menus you can access the update, where you can check for updates for Chrome, for example, or any other browser, okay? And how to update, make sure that you update your browser, okay? This is extremely important, because otherwise, basically some malicious website can actually take advantage of new vulnerabilities on browsers, and basically can download malicious content on your computer without your knowledge. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, so update your web browsers. Okay. Also usually have certain security settings on your computer and browser. Okay, usually you have a range from basically being extremely secure, but it's restrictive, and extremely basically free, and basically have potentially malicious content to be downloaded. Okay, so it's better to keep it at medium. Okay, medium or a little bit higher, basically. Okay. And try to basically update the, as I was saying, update the operating system and web browsers regularly. And basically, if you have any softwares on your computer, try to update and install any software patches that are released. Okay. So, for example, I keep updating my MATLAB, for example, even MATLAB. Okay. Some people might think that MATLAB is basically it doesn't have anything to do with the internet, but actually everything is now connected to the internet. Okay, so whenever you have a piece of software, even Word, even whatever, any software you have on your system, try to keep it up to date. Okay, because sometimes there are vulnerabilities on regular softwares that you might not think it can connect to the internet, or hackers can use or make use of to attack your system, but they are attached to the internet, they are connected to the internet, and they actually can be used as the starting point from a hacker to attack your system. Okay, so any software patches, you try to do that. And usually for your browser, you can actually adjust your security levels to medium or higher. So basically, I would suggest that you keep it at the highest level. And if you feel restricted, you probably can allow certain exceptions or basically make it as medium, but never go below medium. Okay. One of the very important things that some people might not actually take care of is you have to protect all your devices. Okay, so for example, I browse the internet from my computer at work, where I'm working right now in my office, and I use the same account to browse the internet from my home, and I use it also to browse from my mobile device. Okay, so basically, the advantage of doing that for me actually is to be able to have all the history, all the bookmarks, whatever I was browsing, I can continue anywhere. So if I open a website here, I was reading something here, I can go back home and continue reading on the same page because it's going to be basically synchronized between different devices. This is very convenient, okay? But the problem is if you have one of your devices insecure. Some people forget that mobile devices need antivirus as well as the, just like the computer device, okay? So if you don't have an antivirus on your mobile phone, you might access a malicious website that would infect your mobile device, and basically it would gain access to basically several things, or basically get access to, as long as your account is shared by multiple computing devices, it might actually hack into the other devices based on your mobile. Okay, which is a problematic thing. Okay, so basically, first of all, before you actually think about antivirus for your mobile phone, you have to have a password for your mobile phone. Some people think that their mobile device is not that important. You don't keep anything there. They are not. It's not like money or something like that. So basically, they are using it at home or at work, and it's always with me. It's not like people are sharing it with me or something like that. So basically, they say that it's not convenient for me to basically enter the password all the time, okay? Or use a security code or a security pattern or like a fingerprint or something like that. Some people think that it's not important, okay? But it's extremely important. Because basically, the one time you forget your phone somewhere, it's gonna be a major problem for you, okay? So it's all your computing device should be password protected. Some people also think that your computer at home is basically, why should I use a password at home? It's basically, I'm the only one using it, okay? You will never know, okay? It's very important to have all your computing devices password protected, okay? To prevent unauthorized access. And basically, you have also to try to, encrypt your information. Encrypt your information, some of the newer devices now, you would have something like an encryption for the hard drives. So basically, it's the hard drive information is encrypted with a key that is linked to your operating system. So if you have it that way, then if somebody steals your hard drive, okay, with your inventions and commercial secrets and things of that sort, of course, okay. So basically, he will not be able to open it, okay. If it's encrypted, then it's basically, it will not work except on this system, okay? And after you put the operating system password, otherwise it's gonna be basically, it's gonna remain encrypted, and basically it's gonna be useless for anybody who steals it, okay? So this is very important. If you're working in a company and you have some company secrets or like financial documents or tenders or offers or things of that sort, make sure that you have an encrypted hard drive, okay? This is very important. Again, as I was saying, if any one of your devices is compromised, criminals may have access to all your data through your cloud storage, such as Google Drive, okay? This is actually one of the things I do. I have Google Drive on all my devices. I share all my important files between all my devices this way. So basically, if one of my devices gets hacked or gets stolen, okay, this is a big problem for me, okay? Because basically the Google Drive access is there and they can access all the data I have, Okay, so this is very important. You have to protect all your devices. Don't think that mobile devices are not as important. Don't think that my personal laptop is not as important as my computer desktop at work or something like that. Okay, they are all as important as long as you're sharing accounts between them. The very important thing that you have to notice is that the Internet of Things devices pose an even greater risk than your other computing devices. So now many people actually install cameras in their homes. They usually have some Internet of Things devices like, for example, smart homes, things of that sort. Basically, the use of Internet of Things devices is widely expanding, especially after the introduction of 5G. Because 5G actually is actually intended to expand the use of Internet of Things devices. So the problem with Internet of Things devices, as I was mentioned before briefly, the problem with Internet of Things devices is that they don't have whatever you have in your computing device where you can actually update the operating system. What you have in Internet of Things devices is what's called firmware. Firmware is like a version of software, but it's actually written in hardware. Okay. The problem is that whenever you need to, whenever you need to update this firmware, you have to actually take this particular device out, and basically you have to install a certain programmer to it, and basically update the firmware of that device. It's not as easy to update the firmware for an Internet of Things device as it is for a regular computer. So basically the problem is, if there are vulnerabilities discovered for a certain brand of Internet of Things device, like a certain brand of cameras, certain brand of smart home, or certain brand of weather stations or whatever, the problem is that vulnerability is likely to be there, and everybody knows that this particular brand has this particular vulnerability, and it's very difficult to mitigate it. It's very difficult to update the firmware to basically remove or fix this vulnerability. So basically, the IoT device is likely to stay vulnerable because they do not receive updates. This is the major problem here. This is a major issue here for Internet of Things device. People are working on other things or ways of updating the newer IoT devices, but the problem is, or the chances are, you will have at least one IoT device at your home or whatever, work or whatever, that might be old enough to basically have a certain old version of a software that has a vulnerability. So basically, it's extremely difficult to come to a place like King Abdulaziz University, where they have thousands of cameras, and make sure that they are all basically updated to the latest firmware so that they don't have any vulnerability. So this is a big problem. So basically, if this particular IoT device is designed to have internet access, this can be an even greater risk. Okay, so basically, it's very likely that it will be compromised. Okay, it makes it very easy or very likely to be compromised. And then whenever it's compromised and it is on the network of the customer, basically, they will allow access to the customer's local network and data, of course. Okay. Otherwise, basically, unless it's connected to an isolated network for only IoT device, which is basically the recommendation here. So basically, if you have, for example, your computing devices are there, and you have IoT devices here, don't connect them to the same network. So basically, this is like router, for example. Don't connect them all to the same router as the same network. Try to divide them. So basically, create a separate network for IoT devices from that of your computing devices, so that when this IoT device network gets compromised, it doesn't affect your other computing devices. This is very important. We're going to talk about this in more details, inshallah, in the networking part. Okay, how to do that. Okay, so this is very important. So IoT devices are extremely dangerous, and you have to be very sure that whatever, if you, for example, you're assigned to buy certain cameras for your work or something like that, for surveillance or something like that, try to see the available models and try to look on the internet and see the vulnerabilities they have. Because some of the older models might have vulnerabilities that can be exploited, okay? So basically, just make sure that you do your due diligence. You try to make sure that the devices are safe, and if you would allow the firmware to be updated automatically without having to dismantle the device or take it out of its location and basically attach it to a programmer or something like that, that would be much better. Okay, so you have to be really careful when you choose IoT devices. And if you already have an existing IoT devices, just be sure to check on their models and see if they have vulnerabilities and try to find solutions so that your network remains safe. In all cases, even if you got the most secure IoT devices, make sure that they are connected to a separate network from your other computing devices. Okay. One of the things that we all use is a wireless network.
Hello, doctor.
You have a question?
Sorry. For the router and on IoT devices, what if we have only one router, but we separate the SSID name in one router? Is it possible to do like that?
We're going to talk about this in more detail in networking when we understand how to separate, different areas of the network.
Okay.
Okay, because basically we can
Okay.
separate different devices to be in separate networks, and we decide on how to do that there. But actually, you can do it with one router. Yes. So basically, wireless devices are very important because it's very convenient. They are very convenient because basically it allows you to have internet everywhere without having to extend the cables and try to basically, it's usually messy when you try to, have cables and basically if you have an existing cable that might not support the speed that you have now, it's a kind of a hassle to try to change it every now and then and try to make sure that the connectivity is there. Sometimes it's very difficult to do that, okay? So the easiest thing to have, like what we have at King Abdulaziz University, all the students have access to the internet inside the engineering building because you have wireless internet, okay? This is very convenient, okay? The problem comes when you try to add, basically King Abdulaziz University is not a public network, basically. You have to log in with a username and a password that is given by the university. But if you go to the airport, for example, if you go to a hotel or something like that, sometimes they have a public network that is accessible by your computer. Okay, they can just give you basically the SSID, the identifier, the name of the network, and you can just access it. Okay, and if you are also in some places like cafes and things like that, you might have access to free internet. Okay, this is a big problem. Okay, and you have to be sure that basically whenever you do that, you don't really do anything that would exchange passwords or anything like that while you're using a public network, because basically it can be hacked very, very easily. Okay, even if you are in a hotel, okay, they will give you a username and a password to basically, it's like a username and a password for all the guests. So basically all of you are logging into the same network and you will never know who else is there. There might be a hacker nearby or basically a hacker who is residing in that hotel that can actually access your computer through that network. So basically just be careful about that, okay? So wireless networks, as we all know, you have to have a certain SSID, so you choose the network name, like for example, KAU Internet, and there is sometimes there is a preset default password, okay? And basically, if you get a router, you get a wireless access point. Usually all routers now, I'm going to talk about that in the network part. All routers now have access points, which allows you to basically access wireless network. Usually you would come with a certain SSID, a certain default password, and basically these are very, very much known. If you get the brand of, for example, D-Link, for example, this brand name and a certain model, you would know that if you basically access the manual of this particular model and brand, basically you would get the default SSID and the default password for this particular device. If somebody buys this device and installs it without even changing the default passwords, then somebody can actually hack into his network very easily. Okay, so this is extremely important. Okay, the preset SSID and default passwords for a browser-based administrative interface should be changed immediately. Whenever the first thing you do when you install a router or an access point, you have to change the default SSID and the default password. Okay, as I told you before, hackers will be aware of this kind of default access information. It's easy. It's very easy. You just write any model. Okay, just try to find a certain device and basically look for the manual of this device. And inside that manual, you'll find this information very easily. Okay, so basically, this is extremely important. In addition to that, you can actually configure the wireless router to not broadcast the SSID at all. So basically, you will not see the name of the network. But if you write it and write the right password, you can actually access it. So basically, only people who know the name of the SSID or who know the exact SSID can access it. Okay. So for example, if you have a network at your home called My Home, like this, okay, you can decide to hide it. So people who are having their mobile phones and trying to see which wireless networks are available, they will not see that. But actually, if you know that there is a network called My Home and you know the password, you can actually log in without any problems. Now, those who don't know it, they basically they can know it. They have some techniques of actually knowing such things, but actually it will take them some time to actually know the network ID to try to hack it. Okay, so if you hide it, you reduce the chances of people trying to hack into it. Okay, so this is very important. So basically, it just adds additional barrier to discover the network. By the way, one common thing for all thieves basically is that they want to steal things, but actually they don't want to put the effort. Okay, basically, if one of the things that are used for basically preventing people from stealing cars is that basically you have a car like this. Basically, it has this is the driving wheel. Basically, if you get there's something called a club that basically attaches to the wheel, and basically it's like a piece of metal, basically a piece of hard steel. Okay, you attach it there so that when people try to steer the car, this would actually hit the front, the windshield. Okay, and this will actually hit the the side window, and basically you will not be able to steer it. Basically, if you have a device that looks like this, okay, just look it up. It's called the club. It's very well known device. Okay, this club is like a piece of metal that looks like a stick. Okay, so basically the idea of this device is that whenever a thief looks at a car that has this device and another car that doesn't have it, he will say that it's easier for me to look at or try to hack into or try to steal the car that doesn't have it. And this was actually very effective. So basically, if you try to hide your ID, then the hacker would look at the available ones, start with them. Okay, he will not try to steal yours or try to know which one is yours or try to figure out how to get the ID of yours unless he's basically targeting you in particular. And this is very unlikely. Okay, so basically it's better to try to put more barriers to the thieves, because basically the more barriers you add, the less likely they will attack your network, basically. One very important thing that we will go to emphasize in the networking part is that you have to encrypt the wireless communication. Basically, the wireless traffic is just basically flying in the air, basically. Anybody can have a device that actually picks up whatever data is going back and forth between you and the router. Okay, and this is a big problem. If you have an open communication protocol, then people will see everything you're sending. If you're sending a password, they can just get it from there. Okay, people before the wireless networks, they used to have if you have a cable, internet cable that looked like this, these used to just come and try to basically probe certain wires so that they can get this information. Now they can sit in their cars, okay, and just have a device that basically looks at the traffic, the whole traffic actually that you're sending back and forth between you and the router. Okay, there are actually loggers that actually log all the kind of communications that goes on between a certain host and the router. And then they can look at this log and basically try to figure out the kind of information that they can grab from there. And even if something there is encrypted, they can actually take it and try to decrypt it, try to open that encryption or try to break that encryption so that they get passwords and more information from there. So basically, for the wireless network, security is a little bit less, and therefore you have to make sure that everything you send is encrypted, everything, not just the passwords, everything, okay? Just to minimize the amount of information that the hackers can get very easily by just tapping into whatever, or basically reading the network traffic between you and the router, okay? Usually for a network access point, or basically if you have a network card or whatever the network interface you have, it usually doesn't allow you to look at packets that don't belong to you. If they are not sent to you, it will not open. You will just read it and discard it. With some softwares, they will actually allow the network interface to open these packets, even though they know that they don't belong to that user. Okay, this is actually used by hackers all the time. So it's very important to make the hacker's job more difficult by adding encryption, and very strong encryption. Okay, in the network part, we're going to talk about different protocols. And basically, there was an initial protocol called WBA, and there is a newer one called WBA2. WBA actually is found to be basically vulnerable, and basically it was updated. There are other actually like WEP, something like that. And basically, some of them actually have very limited encryption, and they are very easily crackable. They can be cracked by the hackers very easily. So basically, try to use the latest security or the best security feature that are available on your wireless router to make sure that the traffic is all encrypted. If you're using a public network, it's better to try to use a VPN, what's called a virtual private network. Okay, virtual private network basically creates, if you have a device like this and you have internet, for example, here, basically it creates a tunnel. Something like a tunnel, okay? It's not a physical tunnel, just consider it as a description of a process of getting the information from your computer. This is your PC, basically. It gets encrypted here, and basically it gets encrypted and encapsulated, and it gets sent through that tunnel to reach the internet without anybody being able to know what you're sending. So basically, if you're connected to a public network without having a VPN, all your traffic is seen by others. Okay, even people who are sitting around you, if they have hacking capabilities, they can basically hack on whatever you're sending over the network. If you have a VPN, then what you will be able to do is get the encapsulated and encrypted messages. Basically, your messages are wrapped inside a very strong safe. You will not be able to open that safe. So basically, your data can travel and you can access whatever accounts you have without any problems if you use a trusted VPN. Usually, trusted VPNs are not free VPNs. You hear about free VPNs, okay? There is nothing for free, basically. You cannot get something that you can trust for free, okay? Usually, these get something out of allowing you to use their service, okay? So basically, I'm talking about, I'm not talking about just a few hours you're going to spend in the airport or in a cafe or something like that. If you are a businessman, for example, you're traveling a lot, you're going to hotels, you want to use the public networks in these places because you don't want to have roaming charges for the internet, for example, okay? then you should actually subscribe to a trusted VPN that allows you to access whatever resources on your computing devices at home, or your company network, or your bank accounts, or whatever, without having to worry about the kind of public network that you are connected to. Okay, so basically, a trusted VPN service will prevent unauthorized access to your data while using the wireless network. Basically, whatever is sent on the wireless network is something that is encapsulated and encrypted. Encapsulated, yeah, basically you get the data and put them in a certain capsule. Okay, this capsule actually will basically change the kind of data you have, but it looks a little different after encapsulation. Then you put a layer of encryption after that. So basically, whatever you have here is very difficult to read from the outside. It's very difficult to know which encryption key that will basically try to decrypt whatever you have. And usually, most trusted or all trusted VPNs actually use very strong encryption, so that it's almost impossible for anybody to crack that encryption. Okay, if you're using a VPN that is not trusted, or basically it's like something you did yourself, or a brand that is not, or basically an old version, or an old technique of VPN service, then the data can actually be decrypted. Some people actually can crack the encryption. All the services can actually be crackable, and basically people can access your data. So just make sure, if you're using public networks a lot, to subscribe to a trusted VPN, and basically you can find a list of many VPNs out there, and basically are made for people who use public networks a lot, like people who are traveling for business most of the time, and basically it's very expensive, too expensive to access the internet through roaming. If you have a mobile phone and you're trying to use internet outside, and basically I remember this very vividly, because actually last time I was in Egypt, I had a phone with the roaming there, working there, and my little daughter actually used the internet for a minute, and I found a charge of 500 riyals. Okay, for use the internet, roaming internet for 1 minute. Okay, so basically don't put yourself in that situation. Basically don't use roaming for internet, and basically try to use public networks, and subscribe to a trusted VPN. It's not as expensive, definitely it's not expensive as this. So basically it's useful to be mindful of such things. Basically, as I was saying, away from home, public Wi-Fi hotspots allow access to online information and surf the internet. So basically, this is definitely an advantage, because basically otherwise you will have to pay the expensive cost of roaming, basically. Okay, so basically it's best to not access or send any sensitive personal information over public wireless networks. So basically, if you want to just browse for news, for YouTube, some things of that sort, it's fine. This is not a problem. But what you worry about is if you're accessing your email, if you're accessing your bank account, if you're accessing your company account, things of that sort. This is not recommended at all with public Wi-Fi networks. Okay. Another thing also, if you're working on a particular network, if you're accessing a public network, usually you have some settings for file and media sharing. Okay, so basically this will allow, actually, if you can, whenever you connect it to a network, the computer would ask you, is it a private network or a public network? Because this would actually decide on the kind of file and media sharing, and sometimes the services actually that can be shared between your computer and other computers on the network. If you say that this network is private while it's public, then some people on that public network can access your media, can access your shared file. Sometimes you access your pictures, things of that sort. That might be actually, you're basically sharing these things with the other computers at home, for example. Okay, they might be accessible to people on that public network, which is really bad. Okay, so this is extremely important. Okay, so basically make sure that it's configured that basically the file and media sharing are not enabled, and basically require user authentication with encryption if you allow them. Okay, so basically this is very important. Okay, try to minimize the things that are open or shared from your computing device, mobile phone or laptop or whatever, that you're going to use on a public network. To prevent someone from intercepting your information, so basically you have your computer here and you have the router here. Somebody can eavesdrop, as I was saying. Basically, you have the internet, or basically the traffic is going in the ether. Basically, it's going over the air, okay? Somebody can eavesdrop here, okay? So basically, a hacker can be sitting here listening to you, okay? To prevent someone from intercepting your information, which is called, or known as eavesdropping, while using public wireless networks, you basically should use encrypted VPN tunnels. Okay, and basically when you do that, whenever the hacker tries to listen here, you will just get the encrypted packets. He will never be able to decrypt them. Okay, so basically, if you're using a strong encryption, your VPN, the packets are not decipherable. You're not going to be able to crack that encryption at all. Okay, even if the data transmission is intercepted. So basically, you have a box and you have no key to that box, basically. And this box is made of steel, okay? And basically, it would take you maybe more than more effort to open that box than, or sometimes it's actually impossible to open that box in order for you to see what's inside. Okay, so basically, this is an ideal situation when you're working on a public network. One very important thing that people might not notice is that Bluetooth is also a network, okay? So basically, sometimes you allow Bluetooth connectivity to basically, first of all, your device might be visible. This is actually very common, okay? If you sit anywhere and look at the Bluetooth wireless networks that are available, you'll find that many devices are available, okay? This is dangerous because somebody can try to see if you have if the settings of your phone or your device in general would allow you to access his data, he will do that. Okay, this actually was used before in several malicious attacks, basically in public places. Some people I know were in a public place, and basically people actually implanted viruses in their computers or their mobile devices through the Bluetooth. Okay, so it's very important to make sure that Bluetooth, basically, it's not open for anybody to connect. Okay, this is extremely important. Okay, so basically, Bluetooth devices or Bluetooth wireless protocol in general, it allows devices to connect and share information, but at the same time, it's not as secure. Okay, so basically, make sure that whatever you're using or your Bluetooth wireless, okay, you're sharing with Bluetooth is not as important, because some people can eavesdrop, and basically they can sometimes establish remote access controls and distribute malware and drain batteries. Basically, you basically can even, continue sending things to your Bluetooth until your battery is dead, for example. Okay, so basically Bluetooth is very important. Try to look at the Bluetooth security settings on your device to make sure that they are secure enough. They shouldn't allow anybody to access the device. They should not allow, it's actually ideal if they are not discoverable, basically. Just make sure that Bluetooth, the device that you have, is not discoverable by other devices. If you want them to be discoverable, then at the time of that connection, maybe you make them discoverable and then return them back to the silent or the hidden mode, so that other people don't see your device and try to attack it. Now we're going to talk about the password guidelines. Okay, we heard about some password guidelines from HIPAA. Okay, basically we said that it should be eight characters, and it should include letters, numbers, and special characters. This is what we had in HIPAA. Okay, now we're going to have a little bit more about that. Okay. First of all, you have to use, or it's better to use, unique and strong passwords for each online account. This is very difficult. I personally have 100 accounts, something like that, for different things, and it's impossible for me to remember 100 passwords. Okay, so basically, if you want to be, if you want to avoid being vulnerable, basically you have to have a unique and strong password for each one of your accounts. This is usually very difficult, but actually we're going to see a solution to that. The problem is if you use the same passwords for all your online accounts, it's like having one key for everything you have. So one key would open your car, would open your office, would open your home, whatever, open everything basically. Okay, so basically this is the problem, because if this key is stolen somehow, okay, people can access everything you have. Okay, so basically this is not a very good thing. This is not a very good situation. Okay. So the problem is, you know, the account can be actually obtained by such thing as phishing. Okay, for example, if you get a message from your bank saying that there is a problem with your account, please log in to verify that these charges are not yours. For example, basically you say that your account was charged like $1,000, for example, or like $10,000, just to make it a little bit more like a scareware. So basically, you try to use the link and log in quickly to basically reject that charge, because you don't want to lose $10,000, for example. Okay, okay. Basically, when you do that, sometimes they link you to a website that looks like the original bank website, but it's not that one. It's actually a forged one. That would basically access your password. And whenever you have a hold of your password, they can do whatever you want. If you have the same password for everything, then they can access everything you have. Okay? This is a very dangerous thing. So basically, don't rely on a single password for everything. If you use only one password for all accounts, they can get into all of your accounts, steal, erase all your data, or decide to impersonate you. This is the most dangerous, actually. This is not, as I told you before, this might not be as, it's not here yet, okay? But everything, as we saw in the past, basically, it starts in such places as the US and basically propagates all around the world. So basically, eventually, this will be a problem, major problem everywhere in the world, okay? Now it's a very big problem in the US. It's very easy for someone, if he has the, if he hacks into an account, he can actually impersonate a person. Basically, he can claim that he is you, okay? And basically, you would get an ID number, an ID, a new ID with his picture, and can get a new password for his bank account, new credit cards, whatever, new bank cards, and he can get buy a car on your, you know, using your name, and you can do all kinds of things. And at the end, you might not be able to, basically, your reaction to this identity theft might not be fast enough to prevent all these things from happening. So basically, it might be too late, or basically, you recover, but after a lot of things have been damaged, for example, or basically a lot of liabilities might be basically have to be sorted out by you. So basically, you will have to work with lawyers to basically make sure that all these liabilities are not basically gonna be paid by you or something. It's gonna be a big problem in general. So basically, this starts from a password, basically using one password for all the accounts. So basically try to use, it's better to try to use stronger passwords, and definitely try to use as many passwords as you can for your accounts. Okay? The problem, as I said, is that if you want to have a unique password for each account, this is going to be almost impossible. It's very difficult, okay? And I know some people who would actually have a page or a piece of paper where they have this account and this password, account, password, and so on. And they leave it in their office, okay? And basically, if an office boy or a hacker basically gets into your office and finds this piece of paper, then it's basically gonna be basically you give him a very nice gift. Basically use it basically to make sure that all your accounts are basically his after that. Okay, so what should we do? We have many online accounts now, and we need to have many passwords that may be too much to remember. Definitely, it's very difficult for me, at least, to remember 10 passwords. It's very difficult, okay? So basically, what you should have is something called a password manager, okay? I actually have an internet security, like antivirus, and I have a whole suite of things that include a password manager, okay? And this is really very convenient because basically it's from your internet security. It's like from whatever, like McAfee or whatever, Symantec or Norton, whatever, okay? So basically you have a password manager that would allow you, first of all, you put the passwords there and it checks these passwords to be strong enough. So they will let you know if a certain password is weak. So this is extremely important. So the first stage is that they tell you that the password is, if the password is not strong enough, they will tell you that. And you ask you to make it strong enough. And they will give you suggestions on how to do that. The other thing is that they might suggest, they actually can suggest very strong passwords. So they give you like a password of like 20 characters or something like that that are all random, okay? Using letters, numbers, special characters with capitals and smalls, all kinds of things. These passwords are impossible to remember. Definitely impossible to remember, but as long as you're using a password manager, then it's easy to use such things. And this password manager actually is governed by one password. So basically you remember one password for the password manager, and that's it. And basically you choose a strong password, and basically that's it. If you forget that password, then it's a big problem, of course. But actually, if you keep that password, then you have basically you can actually have very strong password for all your accounts, and all of them are unique. And basically, you don't have to worry about this problem any longer. Okay, so password managers, they store and encrypt all your different complex passwords, and then helps you to log into your online accounts automatically with one master password. Okay, so basically, whenever you're trying to log in, it would give you an option to log into the password manager. And when you log into the password manager, it would see the site that you are trying to access and basically fills in the username and password automatically for that site. So this is basically the best solution. Okay. Sometimes it's not actually. It's not a good idea, actually. Sometimes you don't have that many accounts. Some people may not have that many accounts, okay? So basically, just try to focus on making your passwords strong, okay? So basically, for guidelines, never, not just do not, never use dictionary words or names in any language, okay? So for example, don't use Ahmed, don't use Salim, don't use whatever, any word, a cat, dog, things of that sort, because basically any dictionary word. Because basically if somebody's trying to do what's called brute force attack would try to crack that password using all possible combinations. So the first thing they start with is dictionaries. They just use the dictionaries and basically use the words in the dictionary as the initial set of passwords, okay? So for example, if you, if you use a password like Cinderella, for example, okay? Not a good idea, okay? If you use a song name, for example, some people, you know, in the US in particular, they write a song name, a famous song that he likes. It's definitely not a good idea, okay? If you use, for example, if your account name is, for example, ABC XYZ, for example, don't use the same password as ABC XYZ. This would actually gonna be not a very good idea. Don't use the same name with a number here. Don't do that, okay? Basically, don't use the account. This is what we said before. Don't use common misspellings of dictionary words. Some people like basically use, for example, what should I should wanna? I'm trying to get an example of a misspelling of a dictionary word. Okay, for example, expert. Okay, you can write it as expert. Okay, you think that this is not a dictionary word. No, that's not a good idea. Okay, it's also a common misspelling. Some people actually use it like this. Okay, basically things of that sort. Sometimes you actually have very specific names that are written in a misspelling, is a misspelled way, but this misspelling is very common. People use it all the time, and this is not a good idea. Okay, it's definitely possible. If possible, use special characters like @ like number sign, like $sign, things of that sort. Some systems actually do not allow you to do that. So here, if it's possible, then it's a good idea to use these. The point is, if you have, as we said before, if you have a password that consists of 4 characters, okay? If you use only digits from 0 to 9, then you have how many combinations? 10,000. Because here you have 10 combinations times 10 times 10 times 10, 10,000. If you add to that, for example, if you add characters, then you added 26 combinations. If you add also capitals of the characters here, you add another 26. Now you have, this is like 52 plus 10, it's like 62. Now the number of combinations here that are needed to try everything is like 62 to the power 4. It's much larger than 10,000. If you add to them also the set of special characters, then it's even more. Okay, so basically, whenever you use these, basically they start with numbers and then they add small letters, then they add large letters. They try all the combinations, but basically, if you add special characters, then this will delay or make the cracking of the password using brute force much more difficult on the hackers. Okay. As a guideline, it's not just 8 now. People actually recommend that you use 10 or more characters. Actually, we're going to see that in what's called passphrase. The next slide. This is actually the thing that I will actually suggest that you do. So basically, if you use something that looks like this, this is okay because the number of characters here is more than 10. Okay, this is actually difficult. If you imagine that you have 64 combinations here, then you have 64 to the power 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So basically 64 to the power 11. This is a huge number of combinations to try, okay, in order to crack a password like this. But actually, if you put some of the characters here, for example, the L, you put it as 1 here, as you see here, okay, then you made it more difficult because basically here you're using words, okay. You here basically made it like it's not a word anymore. You have even more difficult, password to try to hack. And if you add things like the A, you make it as add, for example. For example, the white, you can make the T as 7, whatever. You can actually make such combinations so that you add or insert some special characters inside. Then will be a much better password. Okay. So basically, try to see here these examples. As you can see here, the better ones have special characters. They still read the same. So basically, it's Amazon Pass. But here, basically, you instead of just having the Amazon Pass with just very small letters, just small letters only, here you have a combination of capitals, small letters. You have special characters. You have numbers. You have everything. So basically, this is much more difficult to crack. The suggestion that I personally use these days is using a passphrase. So instead of using a password that is basically, if you basically try to remember a password that looks like this, it's extremely difficult. Okay, try to have a very small, basically like 8 characters, and include some of the special characters in them. You will find that you will make a lot of mistakes actually when you're trying to log in. Basically, it's inevitable. Basically, you're going to forget exactly what you did, and basically it's going to be a problem for you to remember it. Okay, the easiest way to remember is basically using what's called a passphrase rather than a password. Okay, the passphrase is like this is my passphrase. Okay, this is my passphrase. Okay, here, for example, a cat that loves dogs. Okay, this is good actually. Okay, you can actually add to that the special characters, but actually this is by itself is very good. Basically, it's a phrase that makes sense to you. You can remember it. You can basically think about something that your father told you, for example, or your mother told you, for example, something that is personal to you, okay, and use it as a passphrase, okay. And basically, if you do that, then you have a much higher chance because basically the number of characters is really very large. Okay, some accounts actually allow you to put as many characters as you want. So basically, if you increase the number of characters, you know, see this one here, like maybe this is more than 20 probably. Okay, so basically, if you have something that looks like this, then it's extremely difficult to crack, even with only small characters, or even with only small and large characters without any numbers. Okay, if you have numbers as well, then it's even more more difficult to crack. Okay, so this is actually a suggestion that you might use. So it's easier to create long passphrase than a password because it's in the form of a sentence rather than a word. Sentence is not like this with spaces. No, just forget about the spaces. Just remove the spaces and put all the characters together. Okay, for example, I can take this, remove the spaces, and this will be the password. Okay, for example, choosing a good phrase. Okay, I can use it as my passphrase. You will remember it, and basically, even if you write it down somewhere, it's not gonna be, people will not actually think that this is your password. Okay, so basically, this is a very nice solution to the problem of forgetting your password. The longer length makes the passphrases less vulnerable to dictionary or brute force attacks and easier to remember. Okay, this is actually the new recommendation actually for people to use these days. People actually try to, or at least they discourage actually now the use of special characters. They've actually people now are focused more on the length. Okay, so the longer the password, the better. Okay, this is actually the conclusion of this part here. The longer, the better. Okay. Of course, don't try to use something that all people know. For example, okay, if you're using something like a lyrics from a song or like a popular saying of a leader or whatever, it might not be as good. But actually, if it's something personal, something that only you know about, okay, then this will be actually a great password. NIST is one of the basically is one of the authors of the documents that I give to some of you for their projects. NIST is one of the very important institutes in the world because actually it deals with standards and technology in general. NIST used to be an institution for like calibration of kilogram and meter and second and things of that sort. But actually now it's actually giving guidelines for everything, including software and including passwords. So basically the guidelines from NIST for regular users to use, these are not necessarily the ones that are used in medical devices, but actually they are generally applicable. Yes.
Is it a good idea to put a weak password for the password manager application? I think someone succeeds to break the password. Is it to interpret all?
Yes, definitely. But actually, it's accessible only from your computer. Okay, you're not going to be able to access that password manager from another computer. Okay, so basically, it's less likely. Basically, the account, the online accounts are accessible by people outside of your home or away from your computer. So basically, they can be hacked. Your password manager is installed only on your computer. So basically, it's not accessible so that people can try things. Okay, so it's less likely to be hacked than the online accounts. Definitely, on the choice of the password used for password manager should definitely use a password that you remember first, and it should actually be strong as well. It shouldn't really be an easy password. Okay, so basically don't go and just use a password of ABC, for example, or 1234, for example, as a password. It doesn't make sense. Okay, use a decent password that has characters, it has numbers, and basically it should be enough. Okay, because actually it's not accessible to people from the outside. Nobody outside your computer can hack and try to basically try different combinations to hack into your password manager. Okay.
طيب دكتور، لو مثلا انا عندي اشكال انه مثلا كل البرامج اللي عندي او هذا بباسورد واحد، هل في طريقه مثلا اني اعدل المشكله هذه؟
You have to go into one by one and change them. Okay, some password managers actually, if you put these passwords, if you basically install the password manager, whenever you try to log into a certain resource or something like that, it would basically check on the password and let you know that this password is not strong enough, or it's repeated or whatever, and would suggest to change that password on that website. Okay, so you can actually use the password manager to change the passwords for you. Otherwise, you have to do it yourself. Okay.
Okay. Is
So
there
now
any
we
trusted application?
I think you should just search for password manager, trusted password manager. You'll find that major computing magazines will have a list of trusted, or basically you have reviews of different password managers. You can actually choose from any one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Because actually this, I don't want to recommend a certain certain password manager, because actually there are password managers coming out all the time, and you'll be surprised that some of the newer ones are very good. So basically it's better to get the updated information. So basically if you get the reviews from 2021, for example, that would be really good, because you'll get the latest basically. So basically NIST here, it gives a certain guidelines for how to create passwords. And basically, it's just like guidelines. They are not requirements. Okay. The one that we talked about before for HEPA is basically a requirement. So when we say that the password is minimum 8 characters in HEPA, then it's a requirement. You have to do that. Here, it's just a guideline. Okay, because these are not really made for a certain application. It's just for general computer users. So they recommend that a minimum of 8 characters is used, and not more than 64 characters. Okay, because actually you're likely to forget, if you forget one of the characters, then it will be a problem here. Okay, you should not use a common, easily guessed password, such as password ABC123, whatever, the things that are basically used by many people. I actually, in my other university, basically changed the computer system there, and they created new accounts, and basically just created the basic new passwords for all accounts. And basically, I was trying to access my account, and actually didn't work. I contacted them, and basically I found that the account was there, and they had a common password of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 for all accounts. Okay, so basically doesn't make any sense. Basically, somebody could have basically logged into my account if I didn't ask about my password and change it. Somebody could have logged in with this very simple password, and basically you could have used my email, can send like bad messages, or basically try to hack into the system using my account or whatever. And at the end, it's going to be my account that caused this problem, and basically going to be liable for that. Okay, so basically this is a very bad idea. Okay, don't ever use something like this, ever. Okay. No composition rules. Basically, this is actually a new thing. Okay, some sites, most sites actually, would tell you that the password should have at least one lowercase letter, one uppercase letter, and at least one number. Okay, now they are trying to say that this is no longer important. Why? Because basically hackers don't know that. Okay, basically if you use a password that consists of all numbers, okay, or all characters in a certain way, okay, uppercase or lowercase, the hackers will still try all the combinations. So basically, it's not gonna be of much, it's not gonna make things easier for them to basically use the guidelines or use the composition rules or not. So now it's suggesting that you use something you are familiar with and basically you write it the way you want, okay? It's very important to also improve typing accuracy by allowing the user to see the password while typing, okay? In many cases, actually, it happened to me several times in some accounts. I tried to log in with my password, and for some reason, the caps lock was on, or the language was not English, or something like that. And basically, when you type, you see stars like this, okay? You don't see that whatever you're typing, okay? And each time I try, it doesn't work, even though I'm sure I'm putting the right password, okay? And after the third login attempt that didn't work, basically my account was locked, okay? So this was really bad. And basically I had to, it's a long process actually to try to reset the password through the customer service. It's a big problem. So basically it's better to allow the user to see the password. You might actually make it like this by default, but you basically have what they have now, like they put an eye, okay, and tell you basically if you want to see the password, you can just click that and basically see the password, okay? Make the password visible while you're typing, just to make sure that the typing accuracy is okay. You don't want to have the user make mistakes, and basically they never know that they made the mistakes. And basically, if you try to log in several times with the wrong password, the account will be locked. Also, all printing characters and spaces are allowed. So basically, even spaces are allowed within the password. This wasn't there before, okay? So spaces sometimes were prohibited by the passwords in several places before, okay? So they allow everything now. They actually prefer that you don't have any password hints, okay? Sometimes password hints can give, if you have a passphrase, if you put a hint that actually, sometimes the hacker can be lucky enough to just guess whatever your password is from the hint. So basically, recommend against having a password hint. Basically, they recommend also that you don't have any periodical or arbitrary password expiration. Some systems, this is actually a requirement for HIPAA, by the way. You have to actually change it every certain time, a certain amount of time. But actually, for regular users, they recommend against that, because this can get really confusing, okay? I actually, I have an account in a certain place that requires a new password every 2 months. I ran out of all the passwords I know, or basically I use all the passwords I can think of, basically. And every time I'm asked to add another or use a new password, whenever I try to use one of my old passwords, it tells me that this was used before, please use a new one. So basically, I'm not sure I will actually be able to find something new actually every time. And if you have something that might not be rememberable, sometimes you add something and you basically don't remember it later on, it can cause you problems. Okay, so this is not a good thing to have periodical expiration. For HIPAA, you have to do that because this is a requirement, but actually for regular accounts, it's not a good idea. And if you have to do that, it's actually better to use a password manager, because actually it's easier to change the password or basically use a newer password using the password manager, because it generates a password. No knowledge-based authentication, such as information from secret questions, marketing data, or transaction history. This actually is very common with the banks in particular. So when you're trying to access your account from, or basically trying to call the bank, sometimes they ask you for a secret question that you actually entered whenever you opened your account. Sometimes they ask you for the last transaction. They ask you the last amount you withdrew from your account, for example. Okay, this is not a good idea. Okay, because some people actually can get that information much easier, much more easier than the actual account. Okay, so basically you can use such information to gain access to your account. So just consider these as guidelines. They are not requirements, but actually they are very interesting to know about. The last thing we're going to talk about, basically, I think we should leave this to next time, inshallah. We're going to talk about data encryption. This is very important because this is the technique of itself. You should actually be aware of what goes on there so that you can understand its limitations. And basically, we're going to talk about this later on also in the hashing algorithms, how this works. So basically, just gonna continue this inshallah next time. Okay? Any questions? I graded the first assignment, the first project. Basically, most of you did very well. Those who didn't submit, it's fine. Please submit whenever you want. Okay, it's okay. Okay, just finish at your own time. You're not going to be penalized for having a delayed submission. If you have a delayed submission for a project, it's acceptable. Okay, as long as you do it yourself. Okay, so those who did not submit, it's fine. Submit, next week, week after, it's fine. But please try to catch up because you already have 2 projects now. You have the first project and you have the second one. So basically, I don't want the second project to be delayed as well. Okay, so try to catch up so that you basically don't have any, a third project added to them. Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you. See you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.